Welcome, welcome. Thank you all for joining us. We're going to pause for a bit and let folks get into the room. Wonderful. I see folks joining us, so we'll give it one more minute and then we'll start our presentation. All right. Okay. I think I'll go ahead and get started, and I'll say thank you so much for joining us today for our Kirchner Fellowship HBCU Program Informational Webinar. I am Dr. Lakeisha Odom with the Foundation for Food and Agriculture Research. As we let other folks trickle in, we'll transition to the next slide. So just a few housekeeping issues. Just remember that during the first part of this dialogue, you'll note that you're muted and you can ask any questions in the chat or Q&A. And so we'll have time at the end to ask any questions. So as any questions arise, just put them in the chat and then they will definitely be answered at that Q&A session. And we're making time at the end for a number of questions. And we are also recording, you'll note. And so we will share the webinar with any registrants that could not attend or would like to or attended via email. And then we will also make it available both on the FAR and Kirchner websites for future reference. So if someone couldn't make it and they want this information, it will be made available to them. So before we proceed with our presentation, I'd love the opportunity to introduce the rest of the folks that you will hear from today. So as I mentioned, I am Dr. Lakeisha Odom. I'm from the Foundation for Food and Agriculture Research. Shortly, I'll share a little bit more about our organization and what we do and why we've partnered with the Kirchner group, but I will allow the Kirchner group and all of the wonderful fellows to introduce themselves. So I would start maybe with Blair and then ask Blair to select the next person to introduce themselves.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Blair Kirchner. I'm the Managing Director at Kirchner Group and co-manager of the Kirchner Impact Foundation. And thank you again, everyone, for joining. Hattie.
Thanks, Blair. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Hattie Brown. I am Managing Director of Impact and ESG at Kirchner Group, co-manager of the Kirchner Impact Foundation, and the lead for the HBCU program. Very nice to meet you all. And Kwame.
Hey everybody, my name is Kwame Terra. I was part of the inaugural HBCU cohort with the Kirchner Food Foundation. And yeah, happy to be here. Looking forward to sharing some of my experience with y'all so that you can, prepare the best application for the opportunity. I'll pass it to Terrence.
Thanks, Kwame. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Terrence Range. I serve as one of the directors for the Kirchner Impact Investing Food Fellowship HBCU program. Happy to be here on today's call and excited to go through today's presentation. I'll pass it to Taylor.
Hi, everyone. My name is Taylor Weeks, and I'm one of the current Kirchner HBCU Food Fellows. Very excited to speak with you today.
All right. Thank you so much for that introduction. I think we can proceed to the next slide. So I'd like to share a little bit about the Foundation for Food and Agriculture Research for those of you who may be less familiar with us. We are a 501c3. We were created in the 2014 Farm Bill to increase public agriculture research investments. We build unique public-private partnerships, and we connect funders, researchers, and farmers to provide every person access to affordable, nutritious food grown on thriving farms. We work in what we call our challenge areas. So we work in things across soil health, which is a portfolio that I manage, but also sustainable water management, health ag nexus, which is the connection between agriculture and nutrition, as well as projects around food waste, food loss, food insecurity. We work in urban food systems, next generation crops, and advanced animal systems. We also have initiatives that support scientific workforce development, which this project falls under that body of work. So we also think about how we can invest in the future leaders in agriculture. And this project is basically a poster child for that, the way in which we are training those future leaders. As you'll hear, as you talk to Kwame and Taylor, they are amazing leaders in this space. And then we also have initiatives that support climate. So we have an initiative called Ag Mission, where we're looking at how we can reduce greenhouse gas emissions in the ag sector. So we work widely across the ag sector, and we develop public-private partnerships through one-to-one match. And currently we have funded over 600 million in funded programs and matching, and over 500 distinct funding partners. So I will just transition to Blair to share a little bit more about Kirchner.
Great, thanks, Lakeisha. And it's a pleasure to continue our long standing partnership with you and your team, Lakeisha, at the Foundation for Food and Agriculture Research. So a bit of background about the Kirchner organization. Kirchner Group was founded in 1985, really as a values-based boutique firm to leverage the expertise and experience of seasoned professionals for the benefit of small and medium-sized companies, as well as their investors throughout the entire company life cycle, straight from startup through to exit. Our firm has evolved over the years and now also works with institutional investors managing entire portfolios of companies, as well as advising academic institutions. One of our, as we call it, returning arms, the Kirchner Impact Foundation, was founded in 2015 in order to give back through applying the power of enterprise to make a difference in some of the most pressing challenges in the world today. So our foundation operates in 3 distinct sectors: agriculture and food, health and life science, and education, utilizing 3 integrated components of contribution: head, hip, and heart. Head representing knowledge, hip representing financial resources, and heart representing passion and empathy. Our Kirchner Fellowship Program started 10 years ago with the aim to improve diversity in the investment industry and facilitate access to capital for entrepreneurs in underserved regions. We've built the program on a problem-based learning model and a hands-on approach that's resulted in over 30 alumni student fellows representing 14 countries, gender parity, and of which 68% are individuals of color, who have built a portfolio of 7 companies across 4 different countries. So with that bit of background on ourselves, I'll hand it over to my colleague and co-manager of the Impact Foundation, Hattie Brown, to talk a bit more about the specific HBCU program.
Thanks so much, Blair. I think we can advance to the next slide. So as Blair mentioned, we're going into our 10th year of programming for the Kirchner Fellowship at large this year. HBCU is one of the programs that we run under this umbrella. This will be the 3rd year of the HBCU program, and we're so excited to have recently announced a 5-year partnership with FAR to help us build upon this work. Again, as Blair mentioned, the real heart of the HBCU program is to support and foster diversity, equity, and inclusion within the food and agriculture venture capital space. As it relates to the program structure, it's really follows an academic year, which I'll get into in the next slide a little bit more, but it's really across these 5 phases. There's an onboarding a period, an introduction to key concepts in impact investing, and sort of an entry into the space. A significant part of the program is dedicated to pipeline building, sourcing of companies, going into due diligence with companies, then on to deal selection, and ultimately deal execution and closing. We can advance to the next slide. Thank you. So just to give an overview of sort of the curriculum, timelines, and key tenets of the program, if you will, there's a lot going on this slide. So if there are things that I don't cover, please don't be shy about asking questions in the Q&A period. And of course, we'll also have our contact information if you'd like to follow up with us on any of this. But just to pull a few things out of this slide, we've got a Gantt chart on the right that sort of shows key dates and deadlines. This is all somewhat subject to change over the academic year. It's really quite a fluid program in the sense that Blair had alluded to this problem-based learning model. That really means that it's immersive. It all happens live in real time. So some deadlines and structure is subject to change, but generally we try to follow this sort of structure. So really what this means is it's a student-led process. We have a director team. Some of us are here today with you, but really the students are owning every stage of the investment life cycle, from deal sourcing to due diligence, really engaging with the companies and leading those discussions, reporting back on findings, selecting a few companies to do deep due diligence with, financial analysis, impact analysis, et cetera. And then ultimately, the students have full discretion over the investment in the company, which we think is a very unique aspect of our program. Another thing that we offer is sort of this larger Kirchner Group network and the organizations we partner with, such as FAR, Boston Impact Initiative, et cetera. These wonderful networks that are, part of your network going forward. You will always and forever be an alumni of the program. And we want to make sure you capture the value of that. Just a few other things to highlight. A scholarship is provided for your time. And it is, just to emphasize here, we haven't called it out specifically, but it is a significant investment of time. We anticipate that you spend about 10 to 15 hours a week over the academic year. I think we can advance to the next slide with that. So just to go over the application process and how you can actually get involved and participate in this program, you'll submit an application. It has basic information, some information regarding references. There are a series of essay questions. This is really where we get to know you, or at least our initial introduction to you and your thinking and your excitement and curiosity about the space. You provide a resume or a CV and transcripts for us to review as well. Then based on review of those materials, there's an invitation to interview. So these are video or phone calls with our program directors, and we do reference checks at that stage as well. And then after that, we invite a smaller subset of folks to do a series of assessments. So these are cultural sensitivity assessments because you are working in a team setting. So we want to know, not just who you are as an individual, but who you are in a team setting. We do background checks just because you are investing real money. So we find that that's a necessary component. And there's, lastly, sorry, I confused the team dynamic assessment with cultural sensitivity, but there are two facets of that, nevertheless, just to understand who you are in that team setting. Just to pull out a couple of other key details here. In terms of expectations, I mentioned 10 to 15 hours a week previously for the academic year. We do monthly gatherings as well, where we try to unite all of the cohorts so that there's a lot of cross collaboration and knowledge sharing across the programs. We tend to do 4 to 5 in-person meetings per year. So the ability to travel domestically and sometimes internationally is important. It's really a nice aspect of the program to be able to connect with people in person. So we try to encourage that as much as possible. There was a question that was asked in the registration phase about what makes a unique application and sort of key differentiators of an applicant. Strong communication skills is absolutely critical. And I think this will come out in some of the questions during the panel, but this is something we really look for. So any way you can demonstrate this in your writing, in your essay responses, in your interview skills, that is something that we would really like to see. And in addition to the ability to conduct oneself professionally, you are engaging with CEOs and management teams who have very little time to offer. So we want to always make sure we're putting our best foot forward and representing ourselves professionally so that they know that we're going to be a good partner over the life of the investment. So with that, I think we should get to the real meat of the event here and hear from our fellows and Director Terrence Range. So with that, I'll pass it to Terrence.
Thanks, Hattie, and welcome everyone again to the next segment, which is a really cool part of the program, which is our panel session with Kirchner Fellowship alumni and program participants. So I'm excited to facilitate this discussion because the fellows and alumni get a chance to answer some of the hard-hitting questions that I prepared. So get ready to pull the boxing gloves out. But to start, and just for the benefit of folks who didn't catch the introductions in the beginning, can each of the fellows introduce yourselves the school you attend, your degree or major, and any current social clubs or activities you're involved in. So we'll start with Kwame.
Yeah, hey again, everybody. Thanks, Terrence. My name is Kwame. I recently graduated from Xavier University, Louisiana, with a Master's of Public Health. I coach on the side, but my main focus right now is building my startup company, Bear Health. Some of my interns are here on the call listening in to learn about this opportunity. But yeah, I work about 80 hours a week focused on Bear. I don't really have any outside interest at the moment, but it's just for a season, But yeah, excited to share with you guys about my experience.
I can go. Hi, everyone. My name is Taylor, and I'm a senior finance major at Howard. So I'm in my last year of my undergraduate degree. And besides the Kirchner Fellowship, I'm also in the honors program at Howard. So sort of mentoring other students who are interested in finance and looking at different opportunities in that industry. So that's something that kind of keeps me busy.
Awesome. Well, thank you both for those introductions. Now, let's dive into some of the questions about your experiences with the Kirchner Fellowship. So first off, and we can start with you, Taylor, what motivated you to apply originally to the Kirchner Fellowship? And then how did you approach the application process? And then what do you think made you stand out as a candidate?
So I always had an interest in venture capital, but it's very challenging for undergrads to sort of get that experience. And there are only a handful of programs that really allow students to get actual tangible investing experience. So when the School of Business sort of sent the application and the link out to students, I did think that was something that I should be applied to because it was a very rare opportunity. And so that was really the main motivation for applying, was sort of getting that exposure while in my undergraduate career. And then in terms of just sort of my application, I think, of course, I had finance experience and interest as a finance major, but also having investment banking experience and consulting experience from internships. And then having some ag exposure as well. I come from a family of farmers, and just my own personal interests as well sort of allowed me to sort of blend those two things. And I think just having a real interest in just sort of diversifying access to capital within food and ag and within the sort of startup space was just some of the things that I discussed that I think sort of differentiated myself from other candidates potentially.
Yeah, so for me, came at it a little different than Taylor, right? So I didn't have much experience in farming. I didn't really know much about VC beyond Shark Tank, right? But that's really what this program is about, right? Introducing these concepts and these opportunities to communities that don't typically get access or exposure to them. The first thing I want to say about the application process is that it's really important that you communicate with your mentors and professors about your interest, right? Because that's how this opportunity came to me. One of my professors knew that I was interested in entrepreneurship, knew that I was interested in this kind of space. And so when she saw the opportunity, she thought it might align with me. And so she shared it with me. That's the first step, just in general, just make sure you tell your superiors, or not superiors, but people, professors and stuff, about what you're interested in. As far as the application process, like Hattie was talking about, it's important to show that you can clearly communicate your thoughts and perspectives on certain ideas. I think that's really what helped me stand out in the application. I have a pretty clear idea of kind of like my personal life thesis, and I think I communicated that well, and it aligned with the program. So despite the fact that I didn't necessarily have any finance background at all, or really know much about VC, I think that because I had such a clear and sound kind of worldview and outlook on what impact investing can do, I think that's part of what made me stand out as an applicant.
Thank you both. Those are fascinating insights. And now let's pivot a bit and talk about the learnings from the program. So we'll start with you, Kwame, on this question, but can you discuss, in your experience, a specific project or experience from the fellowship that was particularly impactful or memorable for you? And you can relate it to your current experience as an entrepreneur and what that meant for you, but Could you share a little bit more about your experience when you were in the program and maybe some of those impactful moments that you may have had?
Sure. Yeah, the first thing was maybe like the first week of the program when we're doing just kind of like an overview of venture capital. And that's when I really learned about the financial opportunity at working as a VC. Didn't really know much about it before, but you can really create wealth. And I think it really calibrated my perspective on what real money looks like. And I think that that's important, right? Because what used to seem like a lot to me, maybe a $10,000 grant or something like that, it doesn't move me quite as much because now my mind is a little open to what else is out there. There are billions of dollars being circulated every day, going to people just as talented or that were just as talented as, and that money, should be circulating to us too. And so that was the first thing that really stood out to me. As far as a memorable experience, we had so many great experiences throughout the program. We got to go to Washington, D.C. for the Capitol food fight. That was an incredible experience. Got to go to San Francisco to learn all things VC in that space. Got to go to Mexico to judge a panel of pitch competitions out there. But it was probably meeting with one of the companies that we were looking to invest in, Something Better Foods. We got to meet with the founder in the Bay Area. We got to go drive out to his packing facility and got to really see what it's like underneath the hood, because our founders put out a certain image on their company, but then when you really get to go and meet them and learn about what they're really struggling with and learn them as a person, it was definitely an important part of the experience for sure.
For me, I would say just in terms of like valuable lessons, we have one of our directors, Steve, is sort of a seasoned venture capitalist, and he provides lessons to all the different cohorts that are ongoing throughout the year about investing and really just like the fundamentals of VC. And so some of the things that I've learned that I think really were just helpful for me, and I think for the other fellows as well, is just sort of going beyond the numbers. So of course, numbers are very important in understanding a company and how they're doing, but really understanding the importance of a good management team, a good business model that's scalable, that makes sense, that's meeting a need, right? That's providing a solution to a need. That is just sort of beyond just the finances was very important for me, I think, in having that background and just being deep in the numbers and sort of learning to go outside of that. And then on the flip side, of course, there are many fellows who do not have financial backgrounds, right? And so providing that information and knowledge to them as well in a way that's digestible, that makes sense, and that can actually be applied, during the fellowship and beyond was a very cool opportunity to have. And then in terms of just one experience, I would say getting to know some of the founders that we've talked to this year, they've ranged from countries like India to Nigeria to Tanzania to Chile and Argentina, just, broad geographies, and sort of just understanding, where the founders have come from with their own backgrounds, and then just sort of how the businesses sort of change over time from what they originally thought they were going to do and solve, and then sort of where they are now. It's just sort of helpful in understanding the experience of an entrepreneur, and just helps you sort of gain better insight into where they are and where they're going, and just sort of helps in the general investing process. So that's been very interesting to sort of see in person with some of these companies.
That's awesome. Thank you both for sharing about those experiences. So, it's great to hear about the positive impact of the program, but as you could imagine, like anything you get involved in, no program is without its challenges or barriers. And so what was the biggest hurdle in balancing the time commitment of the fellowship program, your classes, and additionally your personal responsibilities? Either of you can take that one.
I'll start. So I guess just, managing like senior year courses, having social life with friends, and then of course, being an active member of the fellowship. One of the things that is really important is just sort of like, for me, blocking out time. So I will block out time to work on, especially with the sourcing process, it's very time consuming in terms of finding companies, contacting them, and starting that engagement over email or over the phone. And so sort of blocking out time to do what you need to do is very important in terms of just making sure that you're getting done what you need to get done. And then I would say communication with the team and with the directors is very important. There are times when, you know, things are busier than others, right? For the 2 undergrads, myself included, who are in the cohort now, you know, sometimes we have finals or we have midterms. And then Devota, who's another fellow who's a PhD student, she's conducting research for her dissertation. So that takes up time at certain points, right? And so really communicating when we need to lean on others to get things done is something that we've learned over time, but it's become very helpful. And really just playing to each other's strengths, right? Some of us have more of a financial, technical background. Devota is studying integrated biosciences. So she's very familiar with sort of the more agronomy related topics, right? And so using each other's strengths to make sure that we're using each other's time wisely has been, you know, a great part in sort of getting things done quicker.
Yeah, you're definitely going to have to grow in this program. There's no way around it, right? There's going to be a steep learning curve, especially for those who don't come from a financial background. And that was one of the biggest challenges for me. For our team in general, our investment thesis. So at the beginning of the program, you come up with the type of company that you're looking for. Ours was to invest in a company that was improving nutritional health in Black communities. There are not that many companies doing that, right? There aren't that many companies that start with that initiative because venture capitalists and they just traditionally aren't funded or invested in. But that's really what the purpose of this program was. And so though it was a challenge, we kind of stuck to our guns on our thesis and worked hard to find and source companies. We got to talk to over 60 companies that were working on something similar to improving nutritional health in the Black community. So that was our first challenge. It definitely stopped us up a little bit throughout the sourcing process. But ultimately we were able to find a few companies that definitely fit that niche. The second thing on time management, I mean, I was coaching, I was working at the airport, I was taking classes, I was in a relationship, and doing this internship, and ultimately it just comes down to making sacrifices, right? So some things sometimes had to take the short end of the stick to make sure that you're delivering value in the program. It's really up to you, right, and you and the team to make it what it could be. But because the mentors, Hattie and Blair, they're not gonna, you know, track your hours and things like that, right? But we do meet every week, and you have to have something of substance in each meeting. And they won't say it directly, but you know, you can kind of see it in their faces sometimes that, hey, you guys need to pick it up a little bit. So just learning to be accountable. This is not like a casual internship where you might sit in the office for several hours doing minimal work. This is a real opportunity to make a real investment in a real company and to make a difference for whatever thesis that you guys decide to invest based on. And so, yeah, for me, it just came down to sacrifice, right? I decided that this was really important for my future and my career. And so other things that weren't necessarily as important for that, going out, things like that, they had to go, right? It just came down to making that decision. And that's what you'll have to do. But I would generally just recommend not to be doing like 5 things at the same time, general in life, program or not.
Awesome, thanks. Kwame, I'm not sure who told you that we weren't tracking your hours. We actually were.
Oh, no, there's no.
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Or you might need some money then.
For sure. So you mentioned career, and we're going to get a little bit into this with another question I have, but wanted to kind of volley it up with this. And so first, appreciate both of your honesty about the challenges and your dedication in making it work, and really putting out your best foot forward for the fellowship program. But let's have a conversation now just about how the fellowship has influenced your career trajectory. So the question is, how did your experience with the fellowship shape your current career trajectory? And then how has the fellowship community and the larger network impacted your personal growth in this process as well? And so Taylor, we'll start with you with this question.
Yeah, so I knew coming into this that I was interested in investing. I didn't know, I wasn't sure at the time what that would look like in terms of, there's investing with venture capital with small companies, and then there's, of course, like private equity with huge companies, and there's, different types of classes in that range. And I think this fellowship really made me understand that I think investing with entry level companies, early stage companies as they're called, right? Like entrepreneurs who are just starting out is really exciting to me because you just sort of see the passion that they have for this idea and for this business. And you just are sort of watching them grow their idea into an entire company with a team and customers and, all these different stakeholders who are now involved in this story. So that has had a huge impact on me sort of realizing that. And then I think in terms of food and ag, it was never something that I considered before, but now it's something that I'm actually strongly considering. I think we're just sort of seeing the industry grow, obviously, with a need for solving food insecurity, for, reducing carbon emissions, so many different aspects, right? And so that has definitely sort of made me want to continue going in this direction. And if it wasn't for this fellowship, I probably would not have had that trajectory where I'm actually now considering this as like a serious career. So yeah, it's had a huge impact on me.
Yeah, so same is true for me, right? This fellowship experience, it really did decide my career path, right? I remember at the beginning when I had actually already founded my company Bear, but I wasn't really doing much with it at the time. And I was like, I could really see myself being an impact venture capitalist, right? I get to essentially be an entrepreneur as an investor working with startup companies. You get a variety of companies to work with, right? So not just whatever the company that you might be building yourself. And then just hearing all of the stories from these founders, they are so passionate about what they're doing, and it's just a rewarding job. I don't even know why I would call it a job per se, but it's a rewarding way of life. And so yeah, if things don't work out with my company, although I feel like we're doing pretty good, then I'm going to be an impact venture capitalist 100%, and hopefully Kirchner might have a job for me. Anyway, yeah, and then as far as the team goes, right, so I call Martin, who I think he's on the call, just ask him questions about, strategies for my business all the time, right? And he always gives solid answers because he's got a lot of, again, experience in the financial space. And so that's always great to have as a connection. Brianna, the other member of our team, she was in town for Mardi Gras a couple months ago. And so just like it's definitely a family. You guys are going to go through the trenches together. And so yeah, they essentially do become family over time, and they're valuable, smart, driven people to have in your network. And that goes for the entire Kirchner network.
That's awesome. And thanks for that. And Kwame, I'm going to start with you on this next question because you're currently in it full time. You mentioned your company and the role of entrepreneurship, but could you share more about your views on entrepreneurship and technology as a result of being in the program and what it means within the context of social impact and innovation?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I mean, I thought that was a really good question that you guys came up with, because people don't think about it too often. But innovation is really at the core of everything that elevates the world, right? And makes the human condition better, right? Just less than 100 years ago, more than 50% of the world, I think, was in abject poverty, right? But now it's less than 2%, and all of that is from innovations that we often take for granted, like plumbing, innovations in agriculture in particular. It really is at the foundation and the core of our progress as a society. And so it's very important. It's honestly, I think, the most important aspect of social impact, because basically you just make basic needs more and more affordable through initiatives like this. As far as my company goes, it's funny, my New Year's resolution after that year in the fellowship was to do fewer things, right? It worked out, and some of it by choice, some of it was forced. I lost 2 jobs at the end of last year. And so it enabled me to go full time into building my company. But, and I guess I'll get a little bit into that if you have the other question about how it affected my career.
That we'll get into. We'll allow you to pitch your company in a second.
All right.
And Taylor, do you want to respond to that? The role of the program and how it shaped your views on entrepreneurship, innovation, and technology so far?
Yeah, I think that in terms of entrepreneurship, I mean, like, I think it's helped me understand how the risk that entrepreneurs are taking when they sort of set out and start these ventures. My parents are both entrepreneurs, so I've sort of seen them go through a lot of the struggles, a lot of the sacrifices. You know, you work 24/7, as I see with these founders. But I think just sort of seeing that in reality, and then because you understand the risk that these founders are taking, you have a certain amount of reverence for them in terms of just understanding that they are, you know, really putting a lot on the line to start this venture and to, you know, make this idea a reality. In terms of innovation, I think one of the things that we've seen in our cohort is we've looked at a lot of ag-related fintech companies. And I guess I'll sort of talk about it more when I talk about my upcoming job, but I'll basically be working in like fintech investment banking. So just sort of seeing a lot of the innovations that are happening within that space and sort of increasing capital to farmers and sort of people who are in that ecosystem has been really interesting. And I think just one of the bigger sort of themes that we've sort of seen is this just decentralizing of access to capital, of access to resources, of access to information. And so that's something that I'm really excited about and hope to continue seeing in this space and in other spaces, trying to increase access for marginalized people. And so that's something that we've seen a lot in our cohort, which is pretty cool.
Great, thank you, thank you. Now, Kwame, pivoting back to you just specifically for this question, how has the program helped you in your current entrepreneurial activities with your company? Maybe talk about if you've been able to leverage it just with fundraising, intros into certain advisors, even from a software dev backend perspective, allowing you to look at your company based on the diligence that you sort of learned and were trained on as a result of now being an alumni of the Kirchner Fellowship.
Yeah, the first thing, I mean, the main thing is that it just made me a smarter entrepreneur. When you evaluate 60 companies over the course of a year, you learn a few things. You pick up on some things that didn't work for people, some practices, or even like philosophies, right? Some people get into the startup space and just their goal is to get from one round of funding to the next round of funding, into the next round of funding, into the next round of funding, and they're not necessarily building profitable businesses, right? They're just trying to beef up that valuation so that they can maybe sell out later. And so hearing the stories and the struggles, particularly of Black entrepreneurs trying to raise capital, really has shaped our approach to our fundraising process. Raising funds through a crowdfunding equity campaign, as well as grants and things like that. But yeah, I'm not going for venture capital money yet, right? Because before you have a product, before you have anything out, you don't have as much leverage going into the conversation with VCs. And so that is something that I learned directly from being in this program, for sure.
And Taylor, pivoting to you in response to Kwame's answer, how do you think the program will benefit you as you transition into your new role as an analyst at Goldman Sachs this summer?
Yeah, what I've often heard and I've seen in my internships is that the best analysts are often the ones who can use the numbers, the figures, tell a story. But it's also one of the hardest things to figure out. And it's something that I have been trying to sort of figure out throughout my college experience. And I think even going into my analyst program. And I think that this experience has been helpful in sort of building on that knowledge of how to use the financial analysis to tell a story about a company. And that I think transcends throughout finance, whether it's banking, consulting, investing, really being able to connect the analysis to what actually matters, right? And so, through our sessions on, like unit economics, so like, the company sells a cookie for X and it costs X to make a cookie, on the bottom line, like, is this actually creating a profit, right? Just starting from that, right, is just a great way to sort of understand how a business makes money. And it's definitely applicable to investment banking. So I'm grateful for that experience and understanding analysis a bit more.
Great. So finally, as we get to sort of the end and the last few questions, I'd like to hear your advice on if students are interested in applying, but perhaps they're unsure. What advice would you give those students who are sort of on the fence and not really sure if they should apply, if they're in the appropriate major to apply, if they sort of can commit the time, if it makes sense for them in their senior year or wherever they might be in their academic journey, whether it be graduate school or an undergrad? What advice would you give to that unsure student?
For me, I would say, take a look at, the obligations that you are already sort of signed up to do, right? And if you look at those and let's say you block it out by the time and you find that you do have the space to do this, or maybe there are some extra things that, you may not necessarily need and you feel like this is worth it, which I 100% think it is, then I would really consider applying. When I was applying, I was kind of hesitant about applying because I didn't have that much ag experience, for instance, as say like someone studying agronomy or someone studying, the sciences or something. But I think that if you can sort of communicate why you're interested in this opportunity and you know that it's something that will be beneficial to you, then I think you should absolutely apply, ask questions, people who've done it before, right? The fellows, you've met some of us now. You can ask one of our directors, Martin, just sort of, do research and figure out if this is the opportunity for you. And then if you find that it is, then go ahead and apply. There's nothing wrong about applying.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Taylor, right? Always apply. If you have interest in something, at least give yourself a chance. You can always decline the offer if you are selected. Don't recommend that, but always give yourself a chance, right? I think oftentimes we get caught up in our heads thinking about, well, what if I don't want to do this? I don't want to let somebody down, this, that, and the other. You got to give yourself as many opportunities as you can. So put your best foot forward in the application, and definitely go through with it. This has been like the most transformative internship of my career, and I've done several internships in my life at this point. You're going to learn how to communicate, how to work with a team. You're gonna learn how to build wealth for yourself. There are philosophies that are just different in this space that aren't typically communicated or reach into the Black community that I think are important for us if we do want to elevate the Black community moving forward. And so, I highly recommend the program again, and it's a great experience. And traveling's fun, right? That was second favorite part. My favorite part was the experience. Was the work, yeah.
This is a selfishly personal question for you, Kwame and Taylor. Yeah. Who's your favorite director to work with?
Really? I forgot how I answered this last time. I think I did a good job. All of the directors are different, right? They bring a different level of expertise, different temperament. Right, go to one director for one question, another director for a different type of question. But yeah, everybody brings a valuable level of mentorship to the work. But I think generally that the common theme that's most important is that the directors sincerely believe in what they're doing and want this to be a successful program for everybody involved. Like I've worked with I've been in internships before, right? And sometimes it feels like they're just checking a box, right? HBCU initiative, whatever it might be. But like I felt loved by the cohort, maybe by the directors, and I think that was probably the most valuable thing I took from this, and then why I feel so happy to kind of share my experience and encourage other people to apply, because you're gonna be taken care of. You're talking about anything, so yeah.
Thanks. Taylor, do you have a favorite? You can say me, it's okay.
That's funny. No, but I will say that, I agree with everything that Kwame said. And, I will just really double down on the point about feeling cared for. I think, especially going to HBCUs, we have a culture where we are really around a lot of faculty and staff who show a certain sincerity and care for us. And so trying to find similar environments is always something that a lot of us are searching for. And I've definitely found that in Kirchner and this experience.
That's great. Awesome. Thank you both for answering those questions, and thank you all for the advice that you provided for our participants today. So to wrap things up, what I'd like to know lastly is, can you each share a personal or professional accomplishment that you attribute in part to your participation in the Kirchner Fellowship Program?
Yeah. Terrence, I had a question. If I do identify you as my favorite director, would that possibly translate into an investment in my company?
We'll table that one, and we'll have to discuss offline.
Yeah, actually, so my company, again, we're currently fundraising. In the past 3 months, we've raised $47,000 between grants and crowdfunding equity. And again, watching these entrepreneurs go through their fundraising process, most of your interaction is going to be receiving no's from people, making posts on Instagram that get 2 likes, and you just got to keep going. And so that's really what I took from this program, is just that attitude that most things are going to not be working directly for you until you kind of reach a certain point. And so you just got to keep running through that wall. One of the companies that we were working with, Something Better Foods, successfully closed their fundraising round, right? But they were raising for maybe 1.5, 2 years before they were able to get to that. And they went through, again, several mostly no's. And so that's really what the greatest, like the most direct impact that this program has had on me. It's just kind of shaping my attitude and my philosophy towards work and fundraising and building a successful company.
I would say for me, since I'm still in the fellowship, one of the more personal, I think, moments that has really touched me through one of our, I guess, partner organizations, Thought for Food. I was able to attend a conference and meet a Trinidadian entrepreneur, Alpha Senin, who has started a venture in Trinidad. And coming from a Caribbean family and a Caribbean agricultural family, I was always pretty interested in just sort of like that space and some of the stagnation that exists in terms of access to capital, access to funding. And so through Blair actually connecting me with him, I've actually been able to have conversations with him about some of the issues that exist in that space in the Caribbean, with founders trying to access funding, farmers trying to access funding and resources. And so it's sort of helped me just sort of understanding my, I guess, life thesis in a way, if that makes sense. I think I know that I want to impact that space and just sort of play a role in that space in some way. And so those conversations and hearing about that and learning from someone on the ground is sort of helping me figure that out, which is exciting.
That's incredible. And I can't say how proud I am of both of you for the work and the investment that you've made to participate in the fellowship program. And it's so excited to see your journeys respectfully in terms of where you'll go. My only ask is that once you become billionaires, you don't forget about me. Hook a brother up. But I'm excited to really cheer you on, and I'm happy to be a participant in your success. So again, it's really inspiring to hear about all the impact that you all are making collectively. not only with the Kirchner Fellowship Program, but also in your respective studies and in your career, and Kwame, for you as an entrepreneur. So thank you all again for sharing your experiences with us today, and for your dedication again for making a positive impact on society. And so I'd like to wrap up and now transition to Dr. Lakeisha Odom for our next Q&A segment for today's program.
Absolutely. And I just want to reiterate how appreciative we are in you sharing your experience, and how proud we are to be minimally involved, right, in the awesome leaders you are and the awesome leaders you will be. So thank you so much for that. So we do have a couple of questions, and just reminding folks, if you want to put in more, we have about 10 minutes. So I'll start with the first question that we received in our Q&A, and it speaks to eligibility. So we have one person that indicated, and I think probably Hattie, you might be the best person to answer this, that they are in their final year of their doctoral candidacy and they would really like to participate, but are they still eligible if they have less than a year to graduate?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Lakeisha. And for that person as well, I did offer my email too. So if you'd like to take the conversation offline, that's totally fine. So we do expect that folks will be enrolled full-time when they participate in the majority of the program. So for us, one semester, I'm not sure it's been done in the past, but I think that that's a situation where we might be flexible. So at least, one semester of the program enrollment full-time would be the expectation, I think, at a minimum. But Blair, feel free to, contradict or add to anything.
No, I think that's fair.
And our next question is still around eligibility, but is speaking to international students and their eligibility to apply.
Sure, I can take that and anyone can jump in, but I think it's relatively straightforward. Absolutely. If you are an international student enrolled at an HBCU, you are eligible to apply 100%.
Perfect. Let's see. Oh, questions are just coming in. Great. So someone wants to know whether or not the opportunity is open to all levels in their undergraduate career or just juniors or seniors.
Great question. Again, anyone else feel free to jump in, but so we did, we accept any level of undergraduate education. So just off the bat, yes. I will say it strengthens the application to have a little bit of what we would say professional experience. So if you've had an internship, being able to speak to that experience will be very helpful. But yes, you're absolutely eligible to apply.
Wonderful. And I would just chime in and say that I think one of the things I appreciate about each of the cohorts is it tends to be a mixture of folks at various levels, right? You may have a PhD candidate, a master's level, an undergrad, and just recognizing and seeing how each of them has their own strengths, but they learn from each other. I feel like that's something that's really awesome too. So you may be in a cohort where you may have somebody that's at the master's level, the PhD level, and you'll get a chance to learn from all of the cohorts in that way. So I really like that when I see that mixture in the cohorts. Let's see, I think we have a question, and I think that Terrence definitely touched on this with our fellows, and Hattie, you mentioned it, but I'd like to just ask again, because I think folks that are thinking about how to apply to this program really want to understand like what would make them a successful candidate. And if there, and I know you touched on it too, but if there are any other ideas that you or Terrence or anyone might want to chime in and share, because I think the folks that are listening now really want to understand kind of if they're interested in this, how can they be successful?
Yeah, I'll just answer briefly. I think for folks, because we do have a current fellow who's a doctoral candidate, and I've been working closely with her on how does she leverage her experiences, her current academic program in a meaningful way so that perhaps she can entertain a career path outside of the traditional academic sort of capacity. And I think one of the things, if you're currently a graduate student, or if you're in a program that's perhaps slightly outside of the boundaries of what you perceive to be kind of the folks we're looking for with Kirchner, is I think just to really explore and be creative about your intent and really communicate your curiosity in this space and just be open about it and transparent, but also think about ways creatively that you can actually leverage your research currently in a way that can add value to industry, right? And I think if that's something that you're open to doing, you could perhaps position yourself as a viable candidate. And I think that's something we look for, at least I see a lot in applications, is just that deep curiosity. You want to have a deep interest. You'll learn a lot of the things that you'll need to learn along the way. Kwame mentioned that in terms of the upskilling that happens as a result of the rigor of the program. And that's one of the best benefits of it. But showing that you have a deep interest and curiosity and that this is a focus area that gets you excited, I think is something that you want to communicate early on in your application.
And I would just add, two things: authenticity and passion. I think, that's really what we're looking for in the answers to those essay questions. It's almost less about technical side of things. It's the authenticity, the passion, and why you want to be part of this program, as it relates to your career trajectory or your interests or your curiosity.
All right, and I think we have the final question, and it's for the fellows, which feels very appropriate. So someone wanted to know whether or not when scouting or speaking with businesses or entrepreneurs, what are some things to keep in mind? And was there a learning curve? And I know, Kwame, you spoke a little bit to the learning curve, but maybe I think they want to hear more around like when you're engaging and speaking with these businesses, some things you learned that you could share, and then the learning curve maybe you felt in that space, if there was any. And I turn to maybe either of you to answer that.
Yeah, so that was my favorite part of the experience, right? Being able to meet the founders, hear about their passions, hear their stories. Most of the founders that we were speaking with were Black founders. So that it was always refreshing to them to be meeting with us, right? Most of the time that people on the other side of that call don't look like them. And so they were typically fun, open conversations. Just be yourself. The person that you are, you're selected for a reason. So bring that. Don't feel like you have to necessarily be this professional venture capitalist kind of person. Part of the purpose of this program is to bring people from unique backgrounds into the space and add a different twist and bring some value where there hasn't been before. So I would just say, yeah, be yourself. They're generally very open to having conversations because you're students, so it's a little less pressure. So yeah, just again, but don't use that as a reason not to be a solid inquirer of their business, right? So definitely focus on learning and developing your skills around the financial analysis, and just how people tell stories, kind of like what Taylor was saying before. Become a good evaluator of that. It just makes you a stronger individual overall. But yeah, it's a fun experience. Not too much pressure.
Taylor, anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, just consistency is really important, I would say, in communication. And that was something that like I had to learn as well. In terms of just like with the entrepreneurs, a lot of times they're really busy. And so, when they reach out to you wanting to schedule calls, wanting to, provide information or anything like that, being consistent and trying to be as responsive as possible is really important. In sort of moving the process along. And then I think one of the more interesting things is, especially if you have a mandate that allows you to talk to people in different countries and geographies, sometimes there are cultural differences in terms of presentation style and the way that pitches are done, for instance. So being really adaptable is a skill that I also learned, because you may go into the meeting thinking, I'm going to get a PowerPoint and hear this pitch, and they just want to sit and like have a conversation or just sort of bounce off questions, right? And so being really adaptable to change and things not working out the way that you thought they would have is something that I've learned as well.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So we're at the end of our time. We are sharing right now where you can apply. And then if you have follow-up questions, and I would turn it over to either Blair, Hattie, or Terrence for kind of the last word. But again, thank you to the panelists, so much to the fellows for sharing, and thank you all for being here with us. So I'll turn it over to someone else if they would like to say some final farewells.
Thank you so much, Lakeisha. Everyone, thank you so much for your insights, fellows. Terrence, Hattie, for your assistance, Lauren on the back end, and of course, everyone that came to hear more about this program. Don't hesitate to reach out to us if you've got any additional questions. And while we may not have explicitly said it, April 30th is the deadline for applications. So we hope to see all of your applications flow in over the next few weeks. But again, thank you all for your time. And we look forward to any follow-up questions and reviewing your applications.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. And we'll make it available, so you'll have the opportunity to follow up if there's anything in there that you forgot. So thank y'all.
Thank you, everyone. Take care. Bye.